So I recently acquired this, the Brendon Small Signature Epiphone Thunderhorse Explorer. It is an amazing guitar. It is probably the second best Epiphone I have ever played, right under the Brendon Small Signature flying the Snow Falcon. It features burst bucker pickups, coil taps for each one, 2 volumes, 1 tone, and a 3-way switch. Now the only real problem that I have with this guitar so far, and it's not the guitar's fault, but I have 56 to 13 gauge strings on it, so I can have it tuned down 2 whole steps to C standard.
The low C, you know.
Which means I'm kind of trapped into playing songs that are in C standard on this thing. My only other option would be to tune it up to E 2 whole steps, which with strings this thick I would not recommend that. Or I could put a capo on it, which, I mean, come on, that's kind of like cheating. So as much as I would love to just get a second one of these and keep it tuned to E standard, and then I would have 2, so I can use them as chopsticks if I want to.
You can use it for as utensils like chopsticks if you get 2 of them.
But that's a little bit out of my price range right now. The only other electric that I have that I keep at E standard is this John Mayer Shoreline Gold right here, which is great, but I want something more like this. So I set out to look for something. Originally, I was looking at your typical, just really, really low-end Les Pauls, like your entry-level SGs or maybe a Les Paul Jr. But then completely by accident, I stumbled onto this. So apparently, Epiphone came out with a series of Les Paul Jr. and Explorer-styled bodies called their Pro 1 series. These were entry-level guitar packages that came with the guitar, a gig bag, a battery-powered amp, and even a copy of Rocksmith. As far as I could tell, the point of these were meant to be for people that were just wanting to learn guitar, and at about $300, I believe, you know, it was a pretty decent starter package. While I was doing some research and I came across this package, I noticed that this Explorer body looks oddly familiar. So it just so happens that in this Pro 1 series, they made an Explorer with a silver burst finish, just like the Thunderhorse. So the Pro 1 Explorer is as bare bones as you can expect. It comes with 1 humbucker pickup in the bridge position. I couldn't tell you what pickup it is. I tried to do the research and I got conflicting information. Volume knob, tone knob, and a tuner on the side, which is kind of cool, I guess. It feels all right, like decent enough for a really cheap Epiphone that's about 150 bucks, but it does have, it feels like they sealed the fretboard but didn't really actually finish it. So when you're playing the strings on it and you do something like this, you can literally just feel the string just bending into the pores of the wood. But for 150 bucks, you can't really complain. I mean, this is a guitar that's made for people who are literally just learning how to play guitar. But because I was able to find one with the silver burst, it got me to thinking, could I mod this to be more like the Thunderhorse? I don't know, but I'm gonna try. What does this guitar need to be more like this? Well, one thing that's great about the Epiphone is that even though it features a smaller body, the neck scale is still the same. I'm gonna need to put 2 humbuckers on this, which means I'm gonna have to do some woodwork, which I'm not too nervous about. And we are also going to need to install a 3-way switch right there, which I have no clue how I'm going to do yet. I might as well refinish this neck. It's just the wood that needs to be refinished, which should be easy enough. But when all is said and done, I will have a mini Thunderhorse, a Thunderpony, if you will. Maybe I'll name him Little Sebastian. So to make this more like this, I'm gonna give this 2 humbuckers. We are going to add a 3-way switch right there, which I don't know how I'm gonna do yet. And then we are going to redress the fretboard. And hopefully, I don't completely ruin this guitar in the process. I mean, if it does get ruined, it was only 150 bucks. I mean, I'm not out that much, but still, that would kind of suck. So let's make a mini Thunderhorse, Thunderpony, and hopefully not ruin this perfectly mediocre guitar. We're going to start by disassembling this guitar, and thank God it's a bolt-on neck, because that makes this job a lot easier. Now you may notice the professionalism in the modification of this guitar, as evident by the TV tray with a towel on it on my back porch. I'm going to start taping off all of the frets with this gaff tape. Now the reason I'm using gaff tape instead of painter's tape is actually really important. See, Home Depot's a 10-minute drive away, and gaff tape is all I had at the house, so yeah. As I tape up these frets, I'm cutting off any of the excess tape very carefully with an X-Acto blade. Well, if I learned anything from Bob Ross, that's not a mistake, that's just a happy little accident. We're just gonna go with it. We haven't even started working on the guitar, and I've already screwed up twice, so this is gonna be a pretty rough build. We're gonna finish taping off these frets a little more careful than we were before. We were already being pretty careful, but now we're just gonna be a little extra careful. Now we're finished with that, we're going to tape off the side of the neck because we don't want any of our finish to run down. Anytime that you're modding a guitar, it's really important that you have moral support. Although I'm a little worried because she's too stubborn to go inside when I'm outside, and it's August in Texas, which if that doesn't mean anything to you, it just means that you've never been in Texas in August. We're going to use True Oil to refinish this fretboard. Now I've already slightly scuffed up the fretboard with some steel wool, so we're just going to take an old t-shirt that we don't wear anymore, cut it into pieces, and just dab a little bit of True Oil on there. For our first coat, we're going to rub on a really thin layer and let that soak into the wood. And after it dries, we're going to add another coat, and then another one. You get the picture. Just to let you know so I don't have to show you everything, there's 4 coats. I'm putting on 4 coats, and then I'm going to set it aside and let it cure for a couple of days. While we're waiting for that fretboard to cure, we're going to go ahead and disassemble the rest of the guitar. As you can tell by how fast I'm going, I've done this a few times before, but don't worry, you can do it too, it just takes practice. I did hit a roadblock when I came across the wiring for the built-in tuner because I have no clue what's going on there, so I just kind of cut it out and learned how to deal with it later. And now that it's disassembled, give yourself a thumbs up because we're about to get really irresponsible. So here, using the tried and true method of just kind of eyeballing it, I precisely sketch it out where the second pickup and the 3-way switch were going to go on the guitar's body. And I'm using a drill to get rid of as much of the wood as I possibly can before I move on. Now, does this craftsmanship look like the work of somebody who knows what they're doing? Yes. Once we're done with the drill, I take out the chisel and start going to town. And just like the drill, the only reason I'm doing this is to get rid of as much wood as I possibly can. And with the chisel, I'm cutting through the paint and the finish exactly where I need to because I don't want the paint to chip up whenever I get the router out later. With most of the wood gone, the only real work left to do with the router is just smooth out the edges. And remember, all of this is going to be covered with a pick guard, so it doesn't have to look perfect. And after we're done returning the wood back to nature from whence it came, we give ourselves another thumbs up because we somehow haven't ruined the guitar yet. With all the work that needed to be done to the guitar finished, it's time to put all the electronics in there and start soldering it together. Now ignore the gold toggle switch, that's just a placeholder to make sure all of my wiring is correct. I eventually end up replacing it with the black switch. Got a couple of new potentiometers, and it probably took a little bit too long for me to figure out how to get the wiring for the built-in tuner to work, but it ended up working. And with that done, the guitar's coming together pretty nicely, although it is a little out of focus, but don't worry, we can buff that out later. And because I'm such a professional and I totally noticed that the battery in my camera died, I can just explain to you what I did next. With the second pickup in there, all of a sudden our pick guard doesn't fit anymore. So I measured out how big the pickup is, marked that on the pick guard, and then cut it out with an X-Acto knife. Which brings us to this. We're entering the final stretch here. Now that the fretboard is cured for a few days, it's got a nice glossy finish to it, so let's take a second to admire it because we're immediately going to screw it up. We're going to take some steel wool to buff out any of the imperfections in a finish to get it nice and smooth, and then we're going to polish it up to a shine. I'm using car wax, and I couldn't tell you if it's the proper wax that you should use for polishing a fretboard, but I can tell you it's the wax that I'm using because it's the only wax I had in my garage. Now we're just going to polish up that first fret, and about halfway through we're going to stop because we changed our mind. We're not going to polish the fretboard, we're actually going to add one more layer of True Oil. Once that's done drying, we're going to use some 2000 grit sandpaper to wet sand it down to be nice and flat. And once that's done, the only thing left to do is reassemble it all, put some strings on it, and see how everything turned out. Yeah, so there you have it. Thunderpony, complete. So now I have the Thunderhorse that I can keep in C standard, while I have its little brother, the Thunderpony, that I can keep in E standard. I'm actually pretty happy with how this turned out. There are a few things, admittedly, I could have done better. One, it's a little hard to see, but just between the neck pickup and the pick guard, there's ever so small gap where you can actually see the cavity of wood that I had to route out. I could easily just fix that by getting a different pick guard, but finding pick guards for this specific model of Explorer is impossible. They probably didn't make any spare ones. That means if I want to fix that, I will probably either have to make my own pick guard, or I could actually probably 3D print one. I was really nervous as to whether or not I was actually going to be able to fit a 3-way switch into this little slot right here. You'll see the switch doesn't exactly go straight up or down. It kind of goes diagonally, which, not a huge deal. I actually ended up deciding against polishing the whole fretboard for a few reasons. One, it kind of gives it that worn out feel. And two, I wanted to put this thing together, slap some strings on it, and see how that fretboard feels with the True Oil on there now that it's been cured and smoothed down to be nice and flat. And I gotta say, even just like this, it feels 10 times better than it used to. Maybe eventually I'll get around to taking it apart and polishing the fretboard, but actually right now I'm really happy with how it actually feels. I'm really surprised at how well these pickups actually sound. They're just cheap pickups I ordered from China. I think I may have paid like $20 for them a couple of years ago. I eventually plan on getting a decent set of pickups for this guitar, but I wanted to have it put together to see if it was going to be worth it, because I mean, if it ends up being still a crappy little guitar, there's no real point in putting $200 pickups in it. For now, they're surprisingly pretty good. And so that's that. That is how you turn an Epiphone Pro 1 Explorer into a miniature Brendon Small signature model Thunderhorse, Thunderpony. But because I modeled these modifications after a Metalocalypse guitar, no Metalocalypse guitar will be complete without a banana sticker.